Hello, my name is Graham Hughes. Welcome to the NoFly Ninja Challenge. The first person to leave a comment on my video last night was Gaz Riley, who wants to know how to get from Liverpool in the UK all the way over to Vietnam without flying. Now, there's a few different ways you could do this. You could take a cargo ship from Southampton or Plymouth all the way through the Suez Canal, all the way around India, around Southeast Asia, and then get to Vietnam that way. That would be really expensive and very time consuming and it'd be a lot of fun, but I don't think that's what Gaz was really looking for as an answer. Another way you could do it is by going down into the Gulf countries and getting to UAE, where you could probably get a cargo ship across from Dubai to India maybe, and then from India you'd get into Nepal and then try and get over the Himalayas into Tibet, but they open and close that border all the time. I wouldn't recommend going that route. Another way you could go is across the Caspian Sea from Azerbaijan to Kazakhstan, and from there into China and then down into Vietnam. I wouldn't recommend that either. It's a lot of faff, and that boat that goes across the Caspian Sea from Azerbaijan to Kazakhstan is ropey to say the least, and I went on it 10 years ago. If it's still running, it's a rusting hulk. I wouldn't recommend it. Another way you could do it is by going to Moscow and then down to Kazakhstan and then into China again. Not one I would recommend. I mean, don't get me wrong, Kazakhstan's an awesome place and I would recommend it, at the best of times. However, there's a really cool way you can do this journey and I would heartily recommend it. In fact, you can do the whole thing on trains if you want to, all the way from Liverpool to Hanoi. Believe it or not, you can do that entire journey on trains. And so let's talk about how to do it. Obviously, there are bus alternatives, and sometimes the bus alternatives are faster than the train because you can spend an overnight on the bus and sleep. And whereas if you take the train option, you get the train down to London, then you get the Eurostar over to Brussels, and then Brussels to Berlin. You'd have to spend the night in Berlin on the first day. Then the next day you'd have to get to Warsaw in Poland, and then you'd have to get on the overnight train from Warsaw to Moscow. But the important thing is that you get to Moscow. And also bear in mind that if you're getting to Moscow from Poland, you will have to go through Belarus. So you're going to need to look into getting some visas. If you're British, you will need a visa for Belarus. You will need a visa for Russia. And then once you get to Moscow, you will be getting on the Trans-Siberian. They call it Express, I think, but that's a bit mad because it takes 6 days. But the Trans-Siberian, it takes two routes to Beijing. One of them goes through Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia, and the other one goes through Manchuria, depending on which one you decide to take. And they both take realistically about the same amount of time. One leaves on a Tuesday, one leaves on a Saturday. You need one less visa if you go through the Manchuria corridor, I guess, than you do if you go through Mongolia. But I would really, really, really recommend going through Mongolia. So the way you'd do it is Liverpool to London, London to Brussels, or if you're getting a coach, you can get a coach direct from London to Warsaw. But if you go to Brussels, then Brussels to Berlin, spend the night in Berlin, head over to Warsaw the next day, and then get that night train from Warsaw. Whether you get there on the coach or get there on the train, get the night train to Moscow. Make sure your visas are in your passport. So you're going to need 4 visas for this journey. You need a visa for Belarus, Russia, Mongolia, if you're going that way, and China. You don't need a visa for Vietnam as a British citizen. If you are a British citizen, which I assume you are, Gaz, you won't need a visa for Vietnam. So get on the Trans-Siberian all the way from Moscow via Ulaanbaatar, maybe get off in Ulaanbaatar and stay there for a week, I don't know, and then down to Beijing, and then, or you can go the Manchuria route, which basically does the same thing, but it just goes around Mongolia. Get to Beijing. Once you're in Beijing, fantastic. Get down to Shanghai, and then you can go down the coast of China, go through Guangzhou, through to Nanning, and then from Nanning you can get a train to Hanoi, which is fantastic. Or you can get these buses that run all the way around China. One of the cool things about the buses in China is they actually have beds on them. The overnight buses have like proper lie down bunk beds to lie in. They're pretty narrow, so they're not that comfortable, I guess, but I found them fantastic. So that's basically how you would do that journey. And it's really simple. And like I say, that whole journey, you can do it by train, which is quite remarkable. In fact, you can almost get to Singapore by train. There's a bit of a gap where you have to take a bus down in Southeast Asia. But if that gap was plugged, you could take a train from the very top of Scotland all the way down to Singapore, which I find very exciting. But as things stand, you would have to go about getting a bus at that point. If you do want to do this journey, you've got to get all your visas in advance. But Belarus, Russia, Mongolia, China, you need those visas in advance. Don't try and get them on the border. It's way too much faff. Make sure you've got them in your passport. You've gone down to London. You've got them sorted. Again, it's one of those things. It's like, well, I would probably try and think of some way of getting there without having to get a visa, but that would probably require you to take a cargo ship all the way to Singapore and then travel up from Singapore. And as a cargo ship these days is about £100 a night, and it takes a good 3 or 4 weeks to get to Singapore if you're lucky. The cost will tot up very quickly. If you get the Trans-Siberian, if you get second class, it's about $800 from Moscow to Beijing, and that's pretty good value. And if I'd been making this video a few years ago, it would have been a lot less in British pounds. If I'd been making this video just a few weeks ago, it would have been a lot less in British pounds. But now we're heading towards kind of 1-to-1 parity with the dollar, unfortunately. So yeah, you're looking at about £700 for that journey, second class, 6 days though. It works out about £100 a day, give or take. And you get to go all the way across Russia. And you get into Mongolia, you get to go through all the way through China and down into Vietnam. It'll be one hell of a trip. And I would heartily recommend it. I've got to say this, I have not actually done the Trans-Siberian myself, and I've always wanted to. So Gaz, if you're watching this and you do get to do that journey, let me know how it goes, and I will be in such envy of you being able to do that journey before I could. So that's it. That's how you do it. That's how you get from Liverpool to Vietnam, or get to Hanoi, without flying. It's actually remarkably straightforward and simple. And and on to the next video. Bring it. My glasses are steaming up when I breathe. Okay, we're done.